Have you noticed that the backgrounds in my YouTube videos have been changing pretty regularly? Well, I guess I should catch you guys up with my life. My community seemed to really enjoy the fake grass background that I've had in hundreds of my YouTube videos over the years. I would get tagged in a number of Instagram photos when people would see a fake grass wall, maybe at a business, a restaurant, something like that. But then, poof, all of a sudden it seemed to disappear. And I planned on kind of explaining, or I guess showing you guys exactly what was been going on with my life. But that vision, unfortunately, did not meet the actual reality. But I guess I'll start kind of with the trigger of all this, and it comes down to the COVID-19 effect. And honestly, everything lately seems to trace back to that event that impacted everyone and everything in a much different way. For myself, and then girlfriend, now fiance, one of the areas that it touched our particular lives was in making us think very differently about our place of residence. We were both frequent work travelers, and because of that, a small downtown apartment in Austin, Texas never seemed to be too small or not functional enough for us. But with both of our work travel schedules going down to kind of fractions of what it was and us spending 24/7 in a small space, we found ourselves struggling to balance two extremely busy work from home lives. And we know that we had this much easier than most people, but it still made us reconsider our long term plans to live in downtown neighborhoods of major cities. So we decided to do what a ton of people in similar situations did and start to look for a place to live, buy a home in the suburbs. So that's exactly what we ended up doing. We ended up signing a contract to build a home right at the last part of 2020. So, with a projected build end date, closing date in August of 2021, and an end date to our lease in our downtown apartment in Austin in March of 2021, we kind of had a decision to make. Either we spent that 4 to 5 months in another short term lease in Austin, Texas, or maybe another city, or we move the small amount of stuff that we still were planning on keeping into a storage unit and make up for all the lost travel experiences that we didn't have in 2020. So we decided to do the latter and choose adventure. Now, I've always been interested in the digital nomad lifestyle, and to some extent or another, I felt like I've lived it for the last decade as being a road warrior and kind of traveling to clients, being on a plane almost weekly during that time, living in hotel rooms. So we decided to book a monthly Airbnb rental. We bought a plane ticket. We packed up a suitcase each, and until our home was done being built, we would become digital nomads. For those that maybe are not aware or don't follow me on any of my social media accounts, we made 4 main monthly stops during that time. The first one was in Tulum, Mexico. Second was in New Orleans, Louisiana, then Atlanta, Georgia, and then finally Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, in between that time, outside of Tulum, we didn't have a car because we traveled down there. But when we did have a car, or maybe on the way back to the airport, we did stop at other cities. Those would include Cancun, Mexico, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Montgomery, Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, and Houston, Texas. So that's why my background in my YouTube videos have seemed to be changing so much. And I still wanted to keep up with the content that I've been providing on YouTube for the last few years. And my plan, honestly, was to also have a kind of a weekly vlog, or maybe just a place by place vlog, so you guys can kind of keep up with my life. But as I got into becoming a digital nomad and trying to balance a growing consulting business, I realized very quickly that I would not be able to still sustain the level of output that I needed with my consulting business and to put in the time and effort to build out some compelling vlog type content. But now that we have closed on our home and we've been in this for now, I think a week or two, just feeling a little bit more relieved, getting back into a little bit of a schedule and a routine, been able to reflect on lessons learned and just the overall adventure that we went through. And it was a lot of ups. There was probably a lot less downs, but there were some downs, and a lot of those probably came from just personal frustrations over situations, over actual like bad, events or bad situations that really warranted being, upset or anxious. But far and away, there's a ton of things that I was able to learn during that time. And my hope with this piece of content is to kind of share some of those learnings, some of those reflections, and hopefully for anybody that's interested in becoming a digital nomad or maybe is just looking to get outside of their comfort zone and travel a little bit more, maybe this will provide you with some inspiration to make that change in your life. The first kind of reflection is around digital nomad life is really a constant change that's happening over and over in hyperspeed. I have moved a ton of times in different cities since I graduated with my MBA, but this was like on hyperdrive. This was monthly or in some cases daily or weekly. But a lot of that change ultimately provides you an ability to ground yourself and better define your identity. You decide what is ultimately going to stay the same across all of these changing environments. And it makes you strengthen your core beliefs and values because you must find some inner stability within the chaotic environment around you. The second lesson learned is that everyone is not like me. There are so many different types of people in this world. They all have different views. They all have different kind of aspirations and goals and interests. And if you distance yourself long enough from your hometown, your home state, or your home country, your perspective of it will change, sometime for the better and sometime for the worse. And if you travel long enough, you'll start to realize that everything you thought is inaccurate to some extent. People tend to form opinions based around where they're born, rather than what's morally right or objectively true. You'll begin to suspect that the history that you were taught left out a lot of sides of that story. The third lesson is around that everything kind of takes twice as long. It takes time to adapt, and you must remember this when your frustrations emerge. I love a good routine, and as somebody that is a strategy and kind of operational efficiency type of a person, I probably value those things much more than anybody else. But the rule of thumb for digital nomads is everything's going to take you twice as long as you expect. So learn to expect the unexpected. Plan some, but not too much, because those plans are going to need to change. The next lesson is around momentum. And this is probably extremely important if you are running a business, you're owning a business while you are also traveling. And it's the idea that momentum is a productivity multiplier. Momentum is very hard to ever quantify. It's studied a lot, but there's a lot of like misunderstanding around that. But what I found more times than not is that when momentum is hitting you and you're the most inspired to work and you're excited and you're getting a ton of stuff done, stay with that as long as possible. Make sure that you are doing everything you can to maximize that time, even if it kind of goes against, your work-life balance, whatever that is, and you're saying, oh, I wanted to kind of spend more time outside today or something like that. Take that momentum and use it for everything that it's worth. And then on the flip side, when you're just not feeling it, don't try to fight the wave. Don't constantly try to spark creativity or do things that just don't seem to be working. Sometimes it just takes turning off that laptop and doing something differently for a little bit, half a day, whatever, to then bring you back into having that momentum the next day. The next lesson is around don't feeling like you have to YOLO all the time. If you're fortunate enough to live the digital nomad lifestyle, you'll quickly realize how you've won the life lottery. So make sure you don't forget that. Stop and smell the roses. Make sure that you are being conscious that the best moments in life are really just the millions of organic things that happen in the smallest little ways each day. Some of the best times are admittedly probably boring to most people, but cherish those moments. Next reflection is kind of a juxtaposition in terms of where I am today, but it's around that you have too much stuff. Stuff is stuff, and a lot of us have too much of that stuff. And when we had to pare down everything and move it into a storage unit and only have what we have in a backpack and a suitcase, you started to kind of simplify your life and you realized very quickly that you didn't need as much stuff as you thought. Now, all of a sudden, I'm living in this big new house that has all this space and I need to fill that up with stuff, which is much different than what I kind of learned. But my hope is that the stuff in this house will be very thoughtful. I've always been very minimal in terms of what actual physical goods I've attached myself to because I kind of think they are a little bit of a handcuff at times. I don't put a lot of value on those things because I've never thought you can buy happiness through a physical good. Now, I think we all know this, that you can't buy happiness and you can't really get much of an effect by buying things. It's really a fleeting positive emotion, but we forget that from time to time. And I think that digital nomad life will really teach you to remember that experiences, people, feelings are what actually are important. It's not gifts, places, and possessions. The next kind of reflection is that don't underestimate your spatial needs. It's very important to maintain some element of structure in your day, especially if you're running and growing a business. So a lot of times that means having a dedicated workspace set up in that long-term monthly Airbnb. Now, Airbnb actually has a search filter for a dedicated workspace. So utilize that if you need it. And if you're traveling with a partner that also works from home and is going to have a kind of demanding full-time work schedule like yourself, opt for more space if you can, if you can afford it. Make sure that you have some walls or doors that you can shut to make sure that you have the ability for both of you to be the best version of yourselves in your professional lives. And then the final one is around exercising daily. Every time that I was in a slump during the kind of digital nomad time, it was at least mitigated when I got outside and did some form of exercising. Now, we tended to have a monthly gym membership. We just looked for whatever was the closest gym to walking distance. That was the one we chose. That was kind of our preferred way of working out. We enjoy that. But even though we did have that monthly gym membership that we paid for, we also would make sure we were riding bikes like we were in Tulum. We rented a monthly bike, so we were always on the bike. We also would walk around in a lot of the downtown neighborhoods, explore, make sure we were taking in a lot of the history, a lot of the culture in those cities. But the idea overall is to get your blood pumping. That will change your lack of motivation into motivation. It'll change that creative block into a creative kind of flow state, or it will just kind of help that existential angst that you have with the change that's happening in your life. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this piece of content. I know it's much different than most of my content if you are a subscriber to my channel, but if you have any questions about the digital nomad lifestyle, please leave that comment on this piece of content or reach out to me on any of my social media accounts.